we are back. Welcome to Credit Versio's Q&A Wednesday live for, what do we got today? April 19th. Man, the month is just flying by. I'm your host, David Michalek. I'm a certified FICO Pro instructor, which means I'm authorized to teach FICO. I've been in this business for over 10 years. I've done about 20,000 one-on-one credit consultations and helped tens of thousands of people fix their credit, have a better credit experience, understand credit scores, and everything about that. So I'm happy to be here teaching you, everybody who is involved in Credit Versio. And currently we've got about 33,000 active clients that are right now creating dispute letters and doing everything they can to improve their credit situation. So feel free to introduce yourself. I see we got almost a couple dozen on with us today. So it's a great start. Thank you so much for being here. Louie Lou is, hey, we can always count on you to show up. I love the consistency. Welcome. This is an environment where we all come together. We talk about credit. Usually people come here, they got questions about their credit report, their dispute journey using Credit Versio. And it's just going to be us today. John Alzheimer is going to be out. So the reason why I mention that is when we're on together, it's just us. We can talk about credit repair tactics, where when John's here, when I've got him for that a bit of time, we tend to focus more on like the intricacies of credit reports and scores. It's always a good idea to have somebody who is from FICO, who was there for 8 years, and then from Equifax, who was there for 7 years. So that's a really unique perspective. And you know, one of the things that is not very common in the credit repair space, a lot of people in this space don't really want to involve people from FICO and from VantageScore and from the credit bureaus, because they tend to contradict a lot of the so-called theories that people in the credit repair space have. And it's one of the things I'm very comfortable talking to you about. Before I came to Credit Versio, which is full DIY, it's hands down the most brilliant software that's ever been created for this type of work. I was a full service credit repair guy, and I did that for 7.5 years. Tens of thousands of clients, millions and millions of disputes. And what happens when you do that year in, year out, and you talk to thousands and thousands of people, you look at countless credit reports, tens of thousands of credit reports, because it wasn't just the people that I was onboarding and doing a consultation with, it was all the customer service that I had to do, and the team that I trained, and the sales team that I trained. So you get to learn what works, what doesn't work, what's fantasy, what's fiction, what's real. And the more you involve people from the CDIA, that's the consumer, sorry about that, I'm getting a little distracted by one of my guys here. The Consumer Data Industry Association. We have to share an office with, you know, got a couple of guys that are kind of floating about. But anyway, the Consumer Data Industry Association, that's the trade association for the credit bureaus. They wrote what's called the Credit Reporting Resource Guide. It's about that thick, and it explains what everything does, how things are supposed to work, how data furnishers are supposed to handle disputes, how creditors or how credit bureaus are supposed to handle disputes. So once you delve into that and you have a ton of experience, then it's not as, you know, it's not as sexy as the guy that gets on YouTube like, hey, delete everything within 24 hours, you know, that kind of stuff. You want more of a pragmatic approach based on federal consumer protection laws. All right, let's jump into a question. So I have a theme for today. I'm going to talk about medical collections. So big change now. We did not know when medical collections under $500 that were not paid were going to be deleted from the credit bureaus. And we were told it'd be sometime June, July. Even people at the bureaus that we have contacts with didn't even really know for sure. But now, because Credit Versio is digesting and processing tens of thousands of credit reports, now we're starting to see all these medical collections coming off. Not exactly sure what day it happened, but it's happening now. We'll get into that a little bit more. Domingo, can Versio help remove a repo off a credit report, or can it be removed? It's a great question. So the question is never, can Credit Versio do it, or can a credit repair company do it, or can I do it? It all comes down to creating a dispute. Now, what Credit Versio is going to do that is going to by far help you is it's going to look at that repo, compare it across all three bureaus. It's going to look at who that repo is with, and it's going to compare it to the database and go, okay, we've done 10,000, 20,000 disputes with this particular type of an account. What is statistically the highest probability for a deletion? Well, it's probably going to be this suggested dispute reason. So it will present that to you. If it sees an error, if it sees a discrepancy, and there's all kinds of discrepancies that can take place with the repo. A repo is that's just a notation in the note section, but what a repo really is, it's if you look at the payment status, it's called an 09 or it's called a collection charge off. That means it's been charged off. Same thing with like just like a regular credit card that was charged off. It's sort of the same thing. Now, it understands what that is, and it will provide a dispute reason. Now, the second part of your question, can it be removed? The answer is yeah. Anything can be removed from a credit report as long as, and this is going back to what I was saying a second ago, Domingo, about what is factual, what is real world stuff about how do things get deleted from a credit report. And largely, it all comes down to what it says in the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Even though it was written in 1970, it's been modified about 18 times. The last being 2018. And here's the language. Anything can be removed if it's erroneous. That means it's just wrong, mistake, error. It's not supposed to be there. So erroneous, outdated, incomplete, unverifiable. So the fact of the matter is it's usually one in four. Usually it's an error that the creditor just can't fix, or they don't care to fix it. They don't have the data. Maybe they archived it. There's all kinds of reasons why there's an error on an account that the creditor cannot fix. You'd be really surprised. I mean, data furnishing is a very, very flawed business. And even though you get different opinions from different people, at Versio software is an error finding machine. It does it better than even the bureau software, because we see bureau mistakes come through. So we do see errors on about 83% of credit reports have at least one error. That's pretty substantial. They're not all errors that are going to break your score, but still they're errors. So does it have an error that the creditor can't fix, or outdated, incomplete? Maybe. Or can it be verified? 1 in 4, verification. Can the creditor, based on the dispute letter you're going to send through Credit Versio, can they verify the information under what's called the Credit Reporting Resource Guide? There's a whole cadence of things that a data furnisher, when I say data furnisher, just think creditor. It's anybody who furnishes data to a credit bureau. That's a creditor, data furnisher, whomever. So there's a whole outline of things that they have to do that's clearly spelled out to verify the information. The burden is not on you. The burden of proof, the burden of performance is on the data furnisher and to a degree the bureau, which is why you want to do bureau disputes. Bureaus are there to help you. I know that everybody thinks, the bureaus are these evil, these evil things that are against you. No, they're not. They're just libraries. They're just repositories of data. That's all they are. And they want the information to be right. They want it to be as accurate as they can be because they sell this data. There's no value, or there's less value in data that is inaccurate. So Domingo, to answer your question, yeah, it can be deleted. It might take you 3 or 4 rounds to find out if it can be. But if there's an error that can't be fixed, or if it's unverifiable, Credit Versio is going to guide you through that process. Okay, let's see. Dave, all my information has disappeared off Experian. What's up with that? That's a question for Experian. I don't work for Experian. I can't tell you what's going on in there. Chances are, though, I've never had my information disappear from Experian, but I was not able to access my Experian credit report. This happened about 6 years ago. At the time, I was probably, I was maybe 45. And they thought I was like an 18-year-old kid. They got my file mixed up with some young kid who has a name or whatever that's close to mine. So here's what you do, Dave. So let me just put it up one more time just so everybody knows what we're talking about. Here's what you do. Call them and say, hey, I don't have access to my credit report. What happened? Here's what they're going to do. They're going to give you a link. They're going to have you send in a picture of your ID. This is what I had to do. I don't imagine it's going to be any different now just because it's been a few years. They're going to have you email in a picture of your probably driver's license is the best thing, and a recent copy of a utility bill. And then it'll take them maybe a few days, maybe a week or so, and then your credit report will come back. But why it happened, I don't know. These things do happen from time to time. It could be, something. Maybe did you move recently? Did you have a name change? Did you do an application recently where maybe some of the information on the application was contrary to what they had in your file? It's probably what happened. I don't remember what happened to mine. It just seemed like it was very random, but they had it fixed really quick. So not a big idea. It's not a big. It's an inconvenience, but it's not really a big problem. Wilson, why are the credit bureaus not removing debts that have been negotiated for a lesser payoff? Well, they're not supposed to. Just because now this is something that people obviously wrestle with a little bit. It's not what you would think would happen. Let me stage it like this. Our society always rewards somebody. I mean, there's a lot of merit in circling around in making good on something that was defaulted in the past. Everybody likes a redemption story, and that's really what it is. You had an account that went into default. I'm making an assumption, Wilson, but this is typically what happens most of the time. And you swung back around and you satisfied the debt. Okay, that's great. Why is it still on your credit report? Because it's part of your history. See, at the end of the day, a credit report is a historical document. It's a historical representation, Wilson, of everything that you've done over the last up to 20 years, depending on, you can have a mortgage on there. If you've been paying it for 15, 20 years, it'll still be there. But creditors, anybody who's interested in presenting you with what's called a firm offer of credit is going to want to know. Okay, they want to know that these accounts went into default. That's part of your history. And yes, but it shows it as a negative. Yes, because it's a negative account. It will always be a negative account. You cannot change I'm going to make an assumption it's a collection charge-off or from an original creditor, or it's a collection account. It's still going to be a negative account because that's the status of the account. The only thing that happens when you pay off a charge-off or you pay off a collection is it goes to a zero balance. Now, there's some redemption in that. The benefit is all the contemporary scoring models, FICO 8, FICO 9, FICO 10, FICO 10T, Vantage Score 3, Vantage Score 4, all of these scoring models, which are now the standard for just about everything, ignore paid collections. So even though it's cosmetically there, you can see I'm talking just about collections. I'm not talking about charge-offs. Charge-offs are with original creditors like American Express, Verizon, Ford Motor Credit. Okay, I'm talking about collections like LVNV, Enhanced Recovery, Midland Funding. Companies like that. When you pay those collections, those guys, those are categorically ignored. They play no role in the formulation of your score. But yes, Wilson, you're right. They will still be a collection charge-off. There's nothing for them to revert back to. It's not going to ever be an open, in good standing account if it's ever a charge-off. Charge-off is charge-off, meaning the account is done. It's a derogatory account. But it's still a great thing. Don't feel bad. Don't feel like you got slighted. A paid charge-off, a paid collection is better than an unpaid. Now, even though you might not see you won't see a score lift from a paid charge-off, but you certainly could from a paid collection, because the bureaus will, the FICO and Vantage Score both will ignore those. All right. Domingo said, hold on. Domingo says, I got you. Thank you very much. I'm extremely excited about Credit Versio and sent out my first round. Wonderful. This is a great time to be doing your own credit. For very understandable reasons, regulators are cracking down hard on credit repair companies, which we are not. Credit Versios, we don't provide credit repair services. We don't provide credit repair consulting. This is about as close as we get to providing a credit repair service. I'm doing a live Q&A and I'm answering questions. But the fact that you're doing it yourself is a big deal. So there are some big companies that are in the credit repair space that are looking at being shut down, looking at things going very, very poorly for them. So it's always a good thing for you to be doing this yourself. So congratulations, Domingo. Great job getting your first letter out. Let's see. Ricardo, is it true that a hard inquiry will deduct 2 points off your FICO score in case you are denied? No, there's zero truth to that. Okay, let me get into inquiries. Inquiries are one of the subjects that, especially as a certified FICO pro, as an instructor, this is something that I can't avoid. I talk about this all the time. Same thing with John. John formerly worked for FICO. This is something that we always discuss. So I'll use a line that I've used probably 10,000 times. Who knows? That's probably an exaggeration. It's true that an inquiry can affect your credit score. It is untrue that it will always affect your credit score. Well, what's the reason behind that? Well, first of all, there are a lot of variables that go into scoring in this category. So inquiries make up 10%. I'm sorry. Inquiries are in the category that make up 10% of your score. It's usually called new credit. But inquiries are not 10% of your score. There's several other factors that are in that category of 10%. Now, what I mean by inquiries might impact your score, it depends on a lot of things. Like if you have a 750, 800 credit score and you get an inquiry, you will probably not see anything occur with your credit score. Maybe a point, maybe nothing. Maybe you'll see 2 points, 3 points, 4 points. It's hard to know. Now, here's a couple things you do need to know about inquiries. Number one, with FICO, there's a slight difference between FICO and Vantage. And Vantage, I'm also very qualified to talk about Vantage score. Okay, with FICO, if all of your inquiries are within 30 days, okay, 30 days, let's say you go to a car dealership, and we all know this story. You go to a car dealership, they run your application through 9 banks, and you've got 9 inquiries. But it all happens within a short period of time, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks at the most. FICO is not dumb. They understand that you are shopping. You're not shopping for 9 cars. You're shopping for one loan for 1 car. So they do something called deduping, where in that 30-day period, they will take all of those inquiries that are in the same field, which is auto, okay, the same industry. So if it was real estate, they'd all be real estate inquiries. If it was credit card, they all be credit card industries, because there's designations in that data furnishers have when they submit an app, when they take your information and they're doing an inquiry. They identify to the credit bureaus and to FICO what they are. So in that period of 30 days, you've got 9 inquiries. Well, FICO dedupes those into 1. Okay, so you're only getting penalized, if you get penalized at all, for 1 inquiry. FICO and Vantage score both have something in common. They only care about inquiries for 12 months. That's it. Okay, even though you can cosmetically see them on a credit report for 24 months, they play zero role in your score whatsoever at month number 13. So inquiries are one of those things that people really worry about. They're mostly benign. The only time an inquiry that I've ever heard has a major effect is if you're looking to apply for a business loan. They don't like seeing a bunch of inquiries. But apart from that, inquiries are not the grim reaper that a lot of people think that they are. Okay. Wilson says, okay, great. El Diablo, in February, my score dropped 89 points, and per Credit Karma, it stated the reason why was because I paid my Discover card down and gave me a credit line increase. Is that normal? No, not. First of all, I love Credit Karma. Don't get me wrong. Credit Karma really changed the game for people. Credit reports were not as hard to get and ubiquitous as not ubiquitous, but what's the word I'm looking for? Just hard to find and hard to access. Credit reports were a little more mysterious back in the day. And Credit Karma kind of wiped that out by giving you 2 of the 3 bureaus. So, but one of the things El Diablo they don't do is they don't assess score behavior very well. That's just, I mean, I've had people that I've talked to from Credit Karma tell me that. And also, definitely during the dispute process, they tend to get a little confused as to what's going on because you have a lot of status changes that are taking place during a dispute process. 89 points, that's a big drop. When I hear 89 points, I'm thinking that there's something new that's derogatory that was added, although Credit Karma probably could tell you what that was. If you paid a Discover card, there's never anything negative that takes place when you pay a Discover card. Nothing. Or any credit card for that matter. And the reason for that is revolving credit, which is in the balances section of the little pie chart for FICO, that's 30% of your score. Now, that doesn't mean credit card balances are 30% of your score, but you have a substantial amount of your points sitting there because you can control that. Now, you can pretty much wipe out installment loans as far, as far as how it impacts you. You can have as much installment loan debt as you can have millions of dollars of installment loans, and that's not going to impact your score. But if you maxed out your credit cards, if you had lots of credit cards with little balances, that's going to hurt your score. Overutilizing your credit cards is going to really, you can lose 100 points right there easy. So when I see 89 points, I'm like, well, there's more to the story than that. Did you max out another card? Did you get a new card? Do you have more balance? Do you have more cards with balances on them now? So that's not going to be the reason. If they gave you, I keep bringing your comment up here. And they gave you a credit line increase. If they gave you a credit line decrease, then yeah, that could do it because now you've shortened the distance between what your credit limit is, what your credit balance might be, so you could overutilize. You know, that happened a lot during COVID, where creditors were, particularly credit card furnishers, were lowering people's limits because they were freaking out that everybody was out of work and everything that was going on. So we saw credit scores drop initially because of that, because they're like, oh, I don't want to, we're going to take this $10,000 credit limit and we're going to reduce it down to $5,000 because whatever metrics they deem to be important. Now that could possibly do it, but that's not the explanation. I would do a little bit more digging into your credit report. Look at your credit limits versus your balances. I know you said you paid down your Discover card. I guess you have to define what does that mean. Did you pay it down $100, $1,000? Was it a substantial pay down to where you went from 80% utilized to 10%, or was it 80% to 75%? So that's a big drop for something. There's got to be an explanation there somewhere. Ricardo, you are very welcome. Sherry Lee, how difficult is it to clean up your payment history on student loans? How likely is it to get late payments removed and resolved? So there's no difference in that question. It's a great question, Sherry. Anything can be removed or repaired from your credit report. Again, I was just talking about this a second ago. If you weren't on, that's perfectly fine. If it's erroneous, outdated, incomplete, or unverifiable. Unverifiable is where you tend to get late payments removed the most. For a myriad of reasons, data furnishers sometimes can have a difficult time verifying, going through the requirements to verify the history of payments, of late payments. It's a big thing for them to do. And depending on how long ago that happened, especially with student loans, Nelnet, Department of Ed, there's a couple others, but mostly it's Nelnet now, Department of Ed. Sometimes they just don't have the ability to do that, and you might get a lot of those late payments removed from your credit report. So give it a shot. The great thing about what Credit Versio is going to do is it'll compare, and this is actually one of the little technological miracles with Credit Versio. And man, believe me when I tell you, this took a ton of work. When you look at a student loan, a lot of times on people's credit reports, student loans, you could have 5, 10, 15, 20 different accounts. And they all have very similar account numbers. And sometimes they have very similar balances. It took layers and layers of algorithms built by our development team and our software engineers to be able to tell the difference between all these accounts from that first credit report to the second credit report. So when Credit Versio is comparing all of these accounts across all three bureaus, it's able to track them beautifully. So if they make a mistake, if they can't verify information, if they have discrepancies across the three bureaus, man, Credit Versio does an amazing job of catching it. It really, really makes it difficult for, especially if you have a dispute letter, you've got 10 disputes on 10 different student loans. You're gonna come across looking like you know what you're doing, like you just studied this credit report and found all of these problems going across all three bureaus on every single student loan. So I think that's one of the things that I'm probably most proud of about Credit Versio's software technologies is its ability to follow those accounts across multiple bureaus and track all the changes. When I came from my other company, when we did white glove, full service, super expensive credit repair, and I had a credit report processing team of at any given time 20 to 25 people overseas, and that's all they did all day was look at credit reports manually, which is still the standard in this industry. And man, it was tough for them to do that on student loans. Okay. But Sherry, give it a try. Worst case scenario is they come back and verify stuff. But student loans, usually there's a lot of people have success with that. I'm not making any promises or guarantees, but those can be very difficult for creditors to verify. See, I'm curious on this as well. Oh, Stacy, I'm not sure exactly what topic we were talking about. That came in when I was talking about somebody else's stuff. Okay, but you got some questions. Should you always pay your credit cards off each month? Yes, always pay them off. Because listen, there's no FICO to some small degree. Like you're going to hear this, Stacy. Like keep a little bit of a balance. Keep a 1% balance. Yeah, that's okay. Actually, that's true. That 1% balance, but that 1% balance helps you go from like an 840 to maybe an 850. If you're in the 6s or the 7s or the low 8s, that 1% balance is not going to help you. So credit cards are a beautiful thing because it's the only type of an extension of credit where it's interest optional, meaning you don't have to pay interest. You can use your cards, use them as cash. That's what I do. Every place I go, if they'll take my card, I give them my card, and then I pay it off at the end of the month. I think last year for my city, my Costco, I have a Costco City card. My cashback rewards was like, it was either 1,500 or eight. No, it wasn't 1,800. It was about 1,500. I would have remembered 1,800 because that's like, oh, that's almost $2,000. It was about $1,500. So paying this card or using my city Costco card for just about everything, and then paying that off every single month. Not only are my credit scores fantastic, but I got cash back. So, and I don't pay a dime of interest. I have in the past, but I try not to anymore. Okay. And you had a second part of that question. Let's see. I feel like they report later and show up on the report still after being paid. Yeah. Stacy, make sure, this is a really important point. Great question. I'm glad you brought that up. And this is for everybody listening. Yeah, we got like a couple dozen people on here, actually more than that. So this is a very important tip for everybody. There's a big difference between the statement, the end of statement date, and the due date on a credit report. So the end of the statement date, and you have to look at your statement on your credit card to see when that is. So just to make it easy, let's just say my statement date is from the 15th of the month to the 15th of the next month. Okay, that's my statement date. So at the 15th of, say, what are we? We're April. Okay, so the 15th of April, whatever my balance was on my credit card, that's the end of the statement date. That's the cutoff. That's what's going to be reported to the bureaus. Although my due date isn't going to be for like another several weeks. So you're thinking, well, I got plenty of time because my due date's way out there. But in the meantime, that balance was already reported. So what I have on my account, I don't have it anymore because I just tend to pay the cards off all the time, and I know it by heart now. But what I did for a year or two is I had reminders in my calendar that would pop up and say, in 2 days is the end of your Chase statement date. your Discover statement date, your, what's the other card I have? Open Sky statement date. And now I never did with my Citi card because I was already very good at just paying everything off long before my the end of the statement date. So that answers your question, Stacy. That's why you can make a payment, but it has a higher balance, is you're paying it after the end of your statement date. So just bear that in mind. All right. Sherry, if you pay the balance off every month, won't the report just show you on time and you whatever your last month balance was? If you pay it off before the end of the statement date, it'll show as zero balance. That's really what you want. I hope that makes sense. I hope you understand how very, very important that is. Nothing wrong with a 0% credit utilization rate. You look like a much, much better risk when you have little to no credit card debt. Okay, let me just read that one more time, Sherry. I just want to make sure. Every month, won't the report just show you on time? Yep, that's what you want it to do. And whatever your last month's balance was. No, it'll show you what the balance was at the end of that statement date. So here's how, like, I notice all of my cards do this. And I have an Experian app, so I'm always looking at it. I also have Smart Credit too, which is connected to Credit Versio. And what I notice, especially with my Experian app, because I can get a new Experian credit report pretty much every day. It's just included in the monthly fee. When it's the end of my statement date, so I paid off my balance 2-3 days, usually about 2 or 3 days, because it's all instant now. I just pay it right on the app itself, and it credits, draws it out of my account, usually within the next day. And what I'll do is I'll look at my Experian app, and about 2 or 3 days later, that's when the creditor updated that balance. So that's how fast it happens. So way before that due date ever comes. Okay? Hope that makes sense. Stacy, thank you. You're very welcome. Desi, welcome. Thanks for being here. Great questions. Great questions. Keep them coming. Okay, so let's get back to what I was saying a second ago. And again, feel free to interrupt me. This is all about you. I'm here to answer your questions. Getting back to medical collections. So as I was saying when we first got started, in Credit Versio, now we're seeing a flood of credit reports coming in, or we've been for a little while, where those collections, those medical collections, because there's a Metro 2 code in there that identifies them as a collection account, specifically a medical collection account. And we're seeing all of these collections that are under $500 are now deleted. Now, the first time I saw it, I was looking at somebody's account and I saw all these deletions off of their round one. I'm like, man, they had a really good first round deletion. And I opened it up. This wasn't too long ago. And I'm like, what did they get? Let me just see the account, because it was a customer who I was doing, they had a question. I was looking at their account because of a ticket they had created. And I looked at them like, oh, here's what happened. Yes, they disputed it. But as soon as I started opening up these collection accounts, I could tell that they were medical and they were all wiped out. So why did they do that? Why do we have a medical collections, which is estimated that about 72% of the population has a collection, a good chunk of those. Of the collections, about 72% of those are medical collections. So why are those now gone? Well, there was an assessment that was made a little while ago. This was an opinion by the CFPB. This happened to be in line with both FICO and VantageScore. They believed that a medical collection, especially in that dollar amount, was not necessarily an accurate representation of creditworthiness. What that means is what a credit report is designed to do. It's designed to forecast what you're likely to do in the future based off of everything you've done going back 7 years. In 7 years, I'm talking about derogatory credit. Good credit can go back 20 years, especially if you have something like a mortgage you've been paying on. And the whole purpose of that credit report is to provide enough data to both FICO and VantageScore to assess your risk based on the whole cosmology of things that are on your credit report. This whole like cauldron, this mixed bag of info to figure out what are you likely to do. And there are certain things that are great indicators. Collections are great indicators. Recent late payments are a great indicator of financial stability. But what they didn't believe was a good indicator was that time you had to go to urgent care or the emergency room. You're otherwise paying your bills. You're otherwise doing everything fine. And now you've got these little nuisance balances from say the ER or the ER doctor or the hospital, and then you have the hospital. Then of course a lot of the physicians are independent, so they have their own billing, and sometimes this stuff just slips through the cracks. You get a little surprise, and then sometimes if you get distracted, these things can end up on your credit report. So it's a very, very common theme. And what they were able to determine, and their best guess is that, hey, this stuff kind of happens. It doesn't necessarily mean it was intentional and it was deliberate. Maybe the insurance company was supposed to satisfy this. Maybe you're in an argument or you're wrestling around with your insurance company, and during that whole process, it ended up going to collections. It happens all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that story in the last 10 years. So they decided, the bureaus, based off of possibly some heat that they were going to get from the CFPB, that's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and because FICO and VantageScore had already done a little bit of internal investigation, the bureaus are like, listen, if we can get some heat off of us from the CFPB, and it looks like this is a pretty benign move, let's just, all three of us come together and agree that we're going to remove these things from credit reports. And that's where we are right now. So under 500 will be removed. Paid collections, paid medical collection of any denomination, those are being removed. Okay, and still, again, as I said earlier in the broadcast here, that any collection that you have paid, regardless of the dollar amount, is going to be, now this is non-medical collection. If it's a collection that's paid, these are going to be ignored by all the contemporary scoring models. So that's Vantage 3 and 4, and that's FICO 8, which is the most common FICO score that's being used today. That's pretty much used everywhere now. Then FICO 9, which I've only seen a handful of times, and then FICO 10 and FICO 10T. 10T stands for trended data. We can get into that at a later time. Okay. Sherry with another question. I love your questions, Sherry. Keep them coming. I was an authorized user on a card that charged off for $10,000. It is showing on my credit report. Is that accurate? No. That is something that you can get. So the thing about an authorized user is you are not responsible for that dollar amount. Okay, that's the whole point of being an authorized user. And this is a story that I've heard too many times to count as well. So what you can do is you can do one of two things. You can just include it in a dispute. You can use a custom dispute if you want to, like, hey, I was an authorized user. Look at the status of this account. Okay, I was an authorized user. I'm not responsible for the balance. Please remove this from my credit report. Or what you can do, if you have that card, what you can do, or even if you don't have the card, you can call the customer service number. And I've actually done this, not because the card was a charge-off, but I needed to be removed from a card as an authorized user from an old business partner who was continuously maxing that card out. Didn't make me look good. So I called up and I'm like, hey, I'm an authorized user on this card. I don't have any this. I want to have this removed from my credit report, and they did it. So either or, call them or do a dispute with a letter. Use a custom reason. So when you select that account, Sherry, the next step is you're going to select your dispute reason. In the drop down there, it'll have a suggested reason. In the drop down, you can use custom reason if you want to expand a little bit more on it. Okay. All right, great questions. Where are we now? We're about 43 minutes, so we're coming to a close. Boy, I had a bunch of stuff to talk about on this live, and instead I got great questions. I really appreciate that. So we're going to wrap up here. Before I go, I do want to do a little bit of housekeeping. You are very welcome, Sherry. I'm happy to help. I'm glad you're here. I love talking about this. I love giving everybody coaching. I'm glad that you're getting some value out of this. Before I drop off here, and again, I'll take your questions if you have another question that pops up. I want to do just a little bit of coaching about the dispute process. So let me get into I'm going to share my screen with you. And there's two things I want to show you because I've seen this a little more frequently lately. And I want to make sure that everybody understands the importance of this. So I'm going to go over to my screen. So I'm in a Credit Versio account. This is what everybody's account looks like. This is my staging area, so don't let the dates throw you off. These dates don't change right here. This is what I've used. If you've watched the tutorial videos, this is the same account that I use. But I want to show you something here. Down at the very bottom, there's two things I want to cover. I want to cover IDs and I want to cover additional names, specifically additional names, because I got a lot of questions on this that have come in this week. Photo ID and proof of address. This gets missed a lot. And I think the reason why this gets missed is because a lot of people are forgetting to go through their tutorial videos. So Quick Start Video 1, that's one of the first things that I talk about is upload your ID. So this is your either driver's license, state issued ID card, passport. Okay, that's your ID, picture ID, photo ID. And then your proof of address can be a lot of things. It can be a recent utility bill, the cover statement, a cover bank statement. You know, nobody needs to see account balances or anything like that or account numbers. They want to see the name of the institution and your name, okay? Because they understand these companies do an identity check. They have verified that this is your most recent address. And by the way, the reason why you do two, because the bureaus are not going to assume that the address on your ID is currently accurate. How many people are walking around with an address on their driver's license that's not where they live? A lot of people, because it's a pain in the butt to go get a new driver's license. So that's why you include your proof of address. It can be a W-2. It can be a tax statement. It can be, like a pay stub. So it can be a lot of things, but just make sure it's within about 60 days. And you want to upload that. So let me show you. On your home page, this is just a refresher. Right here, you see where it says photo? Now I got a check mark there because I've uploaded it. So I have my IDs uploaded. And if I want to go verify it, I go over into my account and it's in my docs. There you go. I just added it. If I want to view it, I can click view. Okay, that's my doctor.id for you. Okay, same thing with proof of address. And what Credit Versio will do is it will automatically include the ID and proof of address in every dispute letter, because you don't want the bureaus coming back and saying, listen, we'd love to do this for you, but we don't know who you are. So they will send you a response saying, we need your, and they'll outline exactly what I just told you, that this is the ID that we need. Okay, any questions on that at all? Feel free to post them. Lastly, here's some confusion. I'm going to go into my profile. Under identity, so when you get your dispute letters, how many people have looked at their dispute letter and said, why are these additional names on my dispute letter? That's not my name. And that, people sometimes get a little agitated. Like, how do I get rid of these names? Like, for example, I added these in here. So additional first names. My name's David, so I put Dave. Then things like this happen. This is all data entry problems that take place over the years. If you're 40s, if you're in your 50s like me, or you're 30, you've done a ton of applications, probably credit card, car loan, student loan, whatever it is, mortgage. Sometimes there's data entry errors, misspellings of your name. The problem is the bureaus hold on to those. And if you look at your credit report, at the very top, under your scores, there's a section called PII. It's a personal identifiable information. And it's going to have your additional names in there. You'll see it. If you've never looked at it, take a look. Chances are you've got additional names that are close to your name. For women, you might see your maiden name. And the reason why Credit Versio includes these on your dispute letters, because these are the names that the credit bureaus know you by. Now, if you want to get rid of them, if you want to clean up your PII section, then what you do is you go into your tutorial section, go into, it says templates, it might say resources on yours. Go down to the bottom, and well, I apologize. I don't have it in my demo account, But there's a personal information letter that's in here, and it's a letter that you can send to the bureaus along with your ID, asking them to remove additional names because this is your real full name and this is your address. Okay, so don't be scared by this section right here. This is perfectly fine for these names to be there. You don't want to get rid of them. You want the bureaus to get rid of them for you when you send in a letter that's asking them to update your personal information. Okay, and that is all I wanted to go over. That is it. No questions have popped up. We're about an hour now. I'm going to call it a day. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. If you're watching this on a replay and you have questions, feel free to post them. We swing back around and answer them for you. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for being here. And there won't be a live next Wednesday. I will be in New Orleans for a credit convention, but I will be back the week after that. Thank you so much for being here. Have a good night. Take care.